for anyone who works in an office, I think that you'll very much appreciate this. It's called the Ode to the Color Scanner / Printer / Copier / Fax. Why do you hate me so? Is it because your cyan is low? Or are you searching for your true purpose? Your messages to me so cryptic, runtime error, RIP software, I cannot comprehend. Perhaps your quest for identity has made you forget things, like my print job. And this one is entitled, The Trouble with Justice. The trouble with justice, I realized as I watched autumn rain darken the sidewalk. Cool October breezes across my cheek, blanket of gray clouds in the sky. The trouble with justice is, there is no justice, only smaller injustices. No system to completely smooth the unfairness of things, which leads to battles with powerful demons like Raktabija, whose wounds spill blood and gush a torrent of clones. How will it ever end? How can it ever end? We are all guilty of something. Unless the day finally arrives that quenches our desire for revenge and exterminates the white ire of religiously inspired enthusiasts, and there is nothing left to do but to wallow silently in the sins of our own indiscretion. Justice is what eludes me as, voiceless, I watch through the window, unable to keep truth from slinking out of the room. Mostly, justice makes me long for forgiveness, and I patiently wait for the lady herself to put down the scales and throw off the blindfold, and along with that, to do away with Old Testament aphorisms like an eye for an eye. What a sorry group of creatures we are, demanding equity in all crimes, while awaiting karmic justice to befall all that have wronged us. As rain washes our daily dust into storm drains beyond our sight, I begin to think of the saying, which I stole from a bumper sticker I once saw on a fall drive through the mountains. An eye for an eye makes everyone blind, instead of remembering to forgive 70 times 7, spoken by one whose blood ran over the dark battlefield, aware of the smallness of human justice, but awaiting us with open arms. We're so diametrically opposed to one another in politics and religion and so forth that it often makes conversation awkward. And that's where this poem came from. It's called, And That's Why We Talk About Food. And that's why we talk about food. Because when the pictures of Haiti's destruction flashed on TV, Margaret cut globs of yellow butter into white potato mountains. And Marnie said, you know it happened because of all their voodoo. Because when we sat down to eat, any discussion of politics made Tim froth at the mouth about left-wing conspiracy theories, and someone left the table with their plate glistening with gravy, green beans, and tears. Because after grace had been said, I could not remember which God we had prayed to, feared the turkey would rise up from its golden white platter, grabbing a fork, and it would stab me, yelling, who said eating animals is morally correct? Because the first night we invited my Iranian friend to dinner, it involved a night of dancing around the questions we dare not ask. And so we talked about all his favorite things to eat back home. I had this memory flash in my head of a picture of my older brothers and sisters playing dress up from things they'd found in the attic. One of my brothers was wearing a nylon stocking on his head, and they were all dressed up. And I asked my sister once what they were doing, and she said, well, we were playing Egyptians, and we made the youngest among us be our slave. So this actually is not a title poem, but it came from that inspiration. There we stood dressed like Egyptians, or what we thought Egyptians should look like from so many National Geographic magazine pictures we used as examples. Wrapped in old curtains, jewels, tulle, prancing around like we built the pyramids, while life in our sleepy Ohio town rolled by on its way to Middle America. Men went to work at the refinery, spewing invisible gas and smoke in the breeze. Women ironed shirts and watched television. But we didn't notice the quiet turning because we were too busy inventing pictograms, enslaving younger brothers in our game of carving scarabs and conquering the desert. Ancient worlds enticing because the glossy pictures were so clean. Unlike the peeling paint from too much sulfur, the houses abandoned when factories closed. There being no room for Egyptian princes, or slaves, or kings in this county, known for its prized cattle, corn, and soybeans. So I wrote this poem in honor of my mother, who, apropos of nothing, but she knitted the dress that I'm wearing when my sister was in college like a million years ago, and it's appropriate when you hear the poem. Every evening, my mother pulled her knitting out of the basket behind her chair. After the dishes were washed, leftovers shelved, she sat with her metal needles, counting stitches, colored markers, pattern rows, as if ticking off time. Like the fates, she measured and spun. My life could be counted by stripes of mittens, hats, sweaters, blankets, all created in her postprandial meditations. When she cut her final thread, put away her last skein of wool, I felt as if my life too had ended, until I lifted her needles, took up the frayed yarn, and saw her hands reflected back as I looked out the dark window. The first one is entitled Ode to My Firstborn. Ode to My Firstborn. Rubber band-bodied, jolly green giant of a boy, gangling limbs windmilling in the race, you hurtle through days, leaving linus blankets in your wake. Mannish in size, boyish in wondering why pirates use bad grammar. And the second one was a poem written, it's entitled For Sam on His Birthday. 13 years ago, I carried you over the miracle waters. We feasted on milk and honey and promises. You whispered your name in a language too ancient to write. For a moment, our world was golden. Later, you said, we would always be together like apples in pie. Apples with bitterness tempered by that sweet golden crust. And I'll leave you with one more obad, which was sort of a journal poem I just wrote in the last couple weeks. There is a moment in the earliest piece of morning, just before the sun crests the horizon and the sky has not yet put on its makeup. In that moment, time stops to catch a breath, and I find a quietness I can wear.